Folks who are joining us from Arrow, who's going to be running your PowerPoint? Nora?
Yes, that will be me.
Okay. When we get to that point, I'm going to make you a co-host so you can share your screen.
Sure.
And Julio, I'm going to start the webinar.
Got it. Hi, Pat.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Joan.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the continuation of the public hearing on Zoom. We will get started in about 1 minute. Thank you all for joining us.
Hello, folks, please feel free to use the chat and Q&A features right now.
Okay, I want to be mindful of time and honor what I just said, that we will start in 1 minute. I would like to reconvene the public hearing that began on Monday evening. So I will call our reconvening meeting to order. We will, for those who may not have been able to attend the public hearing on Monday, we will go through a short presentation from the applicant, and then we will go directly into public comment. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker. There will be a timer in my window and a backup timer by Jeremy Lawfer, our district manager. We ask that you be respectful and mindful of the timer. We will try to give a 30-second warning, and if you go over your time, we will give you a 5-second grace before muting yourself. We do want to make sure we get through all of the folks who join us this evening. With that said, I would like to turn it over to the applicant for their presentation.
Thank you, Julio. My name is Nora Martins from Ackerman LLP. I'm land use counsel for the applicant, the Arrow Linen Company. Joined today for the presentation, which will be the same presentation that we made at Monday's hearing by Nellie Hennessy from Caliendo Architects and Chris Corrales and Andrew Esposito from Apex Development, Arrow Linen Company's development partner in this project. Let's see, I should be able to share now, right, Jeremy? Yes, looks good. Everyone see the screen?
Yes.
And everyone can hear me, right?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So the project is located at the site currently owned and operated as a commercial laundry by Arrow Linen Company. They've been at the site for over 40 years, and the Arrow Linen Company itself has been in business for almost 75 years. The site is located at 441 and 467 Prospect Avenue, two separate tax lots that together form a U-shaped zoning lot and potential development site with two separate frontages on Prospect Avenue. Very large site taking up about 25% of the block. The zoning is currently R5B. The proposed land use application, which we'll get into the specific actions later, seeks to rezone this site to an R71 to facilitate the redevelopment of the site with a more compatible residential development that will provide approximately 244 units of housing, including at least 61 units of permanently affordable housing pursuant to the mandatory inclusionary housing program. You can see here on this land use map, the surrounding area is heavily residential in character. The Arrow Linen site, which is shown in purple, which is the land use color for industrial manufacturing use, stands out in this map as incompatible and out of context with the surrounding residential development. This photo shows, actually, I mentioned before, Arrow Linen has been at the site for about 42 years, but the site has actually been used as a commercial laundry for almost 100 years. This photo shows the predecessor, the Cascade Company, which had the commercial laundry at the site. And until about the late 90s, there was a approximately 100-foot tall chimney stack located on the site, which was taken down in the late 90s. Some photos of the site. You can see the two frontages. There's the building, the Arrow Linen building frontage at 467 Prospect, and then the wall enclosing the parking area on 441 Prospect Avenue. You can see here, the discord between the existing commercial use, well, really heavy commercial industrial use, and the surrounding residential. Here's an aerial view of the block showing the existing operations. You can see in the center of the block, abutting the residential rear yards of the other buildings on the block, is that industrial use, parking, trucks, and operations. This is an aerial view from a different, more of a bird's eye perspective, showing the surrounding residential context and the proximity to the 15th Street Prospect Park Station, served by the F and the G, which is a short walk from the site. The actions proposed to facilitate the redevelopment of this site include a zoning map amendment, which would change the existing R5B zoning district to an R71 zoning district, a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area with MIH option 1. Option 1 requires at least 25% of any residential floor area to be built at the site now and forever to be affordable to families with an average income, 60% of the AMI. And the third action is a zoning special permit that seeks to waive the accessory off-street parking regulations required due to the site's location in the transit zone. This map shows, just on the left, you have the existing residential R5B zoning district. And then that shows on the right what the proposed zoning map would look like with the R71 district mapped on a portion of the block. In Community District 7, affordable housing is an extremely pressing issue, as it is everywhere in the city. Identified as the most pressing issue, actually, in Community Board 7's 2019 through 2023 statements of community district needs. So a consistently pressing issue that has not been alleviated. There's an aging housing stock with 86% of the housing units built before 1970 in the community district, 58% built before 1940. So approaching the 100-year mark on a large amount of housing. And only 2.4% of the housing was built in the last 15 years. The community district is rent burdened. 45% of the community district is rent burdened, and there's a very low 5.7% rental vacancy rate. Even lower when you look at the council district. So the proposed development, which would build 2 new residential buildings on the site, would consist of two 13-story buildings, rising to a total height of 130 feet. While that is the highest height the buildings reach, they actually have various setbacks and lower building massing, including 4- and 7-story base heights in the front and sides of the buildings to minimize that mass and introduce more varied building articulation. It's about 248,000, almost 249,000 square feet of residential floor area, the 4.6 FAR that's allowed by the R71 zoning district. This would permit approximately 244 dwelling units. That breakdown right now looks like 34 studios, 14%, 56 one-bedrooms, 23%, 114 two-bedrooms, which would be 47%, and 43 bedrooms, 16%. Which is a significant number of 2- and 3-bedroom units, far more than you typically see in new construction. The MIH set aside for the permanently income restricted units, right now, that would be 61 units with MIH option 1, that's the 25%. Option 2 would be more units, but affordable to a higher AMI level. And on the next slide, we'll get into the breakdown of those MIH units. I think it's really important. And then another significant aspect of the project is restoring significant, almost a half an acre of landscaped open space to this block at the rear of the site, replacing what's now industrial use. And the parking waiver, which is requested to allow a better site plan without the accessory parking that makes it infeasible to provide affordable housing. This slide shows an illustrative breakdown, all illustrative because, until the time such building is built, these, rents are current, they're 2024. But I think it's really helpful to look at as a reference. So we have at the 40% AMI level, 24 units. It is a requirement in option 1 that at least 10% of the units be at 40% AMI to hit that lower income tier. So, and then 60% AMI would be 24 units, and then at 80% of AMI, 13 units. So that basically gives you a range for a 1-bedroom, for example. A 1-bedroom, the rents would be between $1,013 and $2,246 for a 1-bedroom. For a 2-bedroom, the range would be from $1,289 to $2,687. And for a 3-bedroom, the range would be from $1,481 to $3,096 for a 3-bedroom, which is significantly below the current market in this neighborhood. Just turn it over quickly on the next few slides for Nellie to go through how the building was massed under the R71 zoning. Nellie, are you available to speak?
You're muted, Nelly. I don't know if you're trying. There you go.
I was trying to get it off. I guess I just got, okay. Good evening, everyone. We have designed these, due to the depth of these lots, we have designed these buildings with different heights, concentrating the height in the middle portion of both lots to try and minimize the impact on the surrounding area. We have created courtyards, which are right next door to the other courtyards on either side of both lots. And in the rear, we have an open area that will replace the 1-story building that's there currently, and it will be open permanently. The rear of the buildings are about over 60 feet from the back of the buildings facing Windsor Place. The front of the buildings are a brick facade that will be 4 stories on the sides to match the existing streetscape. And then we have a base of in the middle of 7 stories, and then a setback up to 13 stories. We've used different materials to try and create visual appeal, and the middle portion will be glass to reflect the environment and try to minimize the perception of height from the street. And I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks.
Nora, again.
Thanks, Nye. So, as mentioned before, this is a rendering of the landscaped rear yard that would be in the center of the block and between the two buildings. You can see here a significant amount of green landscaped open space, which will not only green the block, but also contribute to stormwater retention and sustainability at the site. Just a site plan showing what Nellie described, which includes these various building typologies, the 4-story, the 7-story, and then the 13-story building portions, and the landscaped open space at the rear. This is just a similar drawing showing the first floor level. So under the existing conditions, the site, which is over an acre, 54,000 square feet, it's occupied entirely by buildings and pavement. That's 100% impervious ground coverage. All stormwater means all stormwater is diverted to local sewers. The proposal would increase the pervious ground coverage by providing this, I mean, almost half the site would be this landscaped open space, which would be approximately 90% softscape grass landscaping that would absorb stormwater. Regardless of the site design, the DEP review and approval of a sewer connection permit is required for this new development. Those permitting requirements were updated and significantly increased 2 years ago. Now requires approximately 5 times more water to be retained on site, which is a significant improvement, not only over the existing conditions, but over what would have been required if this building were built 3 years ago. Another strategy we're looking at to retain water is include rainwater harvesting for reuse and irrigation of landscaped areas, using permeable paving and drainage underlayment to maximize stormwater infiltration, designing the site grading to control water flow, and coordinating with DEP to install bioswales along Prospect Avenue and rain gardens in the rear yard. And lastly, with regard to sustainability and energy efficiency, looking at either a solar-ready roof, which could be either a solar roof or a green roof. Energy and sound efficient windows would be provided, and of course, Energy Star appliances and energy efficient mechanical equipment would be utilized. That concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. If you could just stop sharing your screen for me, please. Thank you so much. I do see that there are some hands up already. I have documented the first 7, so I'm actually going to ask if folks can lower their hand momentarily for actually I can do that myself. I'm going to ask Jeremy to read off the first 5 names from those who did not get an opportunity to speak at the Monday public hearing, and then we will go to continued public comment. Or does someone else, Natasha Marie?
I have it. I have it, Julio.
Wonderful.
I
Thank you
just
so
have
much.
to also find them on the attendee list so I can unmute them. But I have Nathan Lynch first.
Can you call the first
I
5?
see Nathan. So I have Nathan Lynch, then Lisa Maloof, then Terrence Wilson, Beth Allen, and Roberto Barrios. I saw Nathan was here. Give me one moment to unmute him.
Thank you. And if you heard your name, please raise your hand.
Nathan, you can unmute yourself now. Julio, I'm sorry, before you do though, Julio, do you have a clock?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Nathan, you could go now.
Excellent. Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan. I'm a resident of Windsor Terrace and this community board. I'll be brief. I've lived here for the past 6 years. And like everybody else who lives here, I love this neighborhood. I love that we're a short walk to two of the best green spaces in the city, Prospect Park and Greenwood Cemetery, where you can find me most weekends. And my spouse and I live in Windsor Terrace to be close to family. Our neighborhood has great schools, great transportation options, and great neighbors, all of which means that this is a great place for families. However, the cost of living has gotten so expensive, especially for young families, and nothing has squeezed families more than housing costs in this neighborhood. Renters like myself have seen costs skyrocket over the past decade, and the only explanation is the simple one. More people want to live here and continue to live here, and there are not enough places for them to live. And as long as that continues, prices for renters like myself are just going to go up and up forever. If you haven't rented in this neighborhood for a long time, I'd really encourage you to take a look at apartments for rent, rooms for rent in the neighborhood. The results might surprise you. Personally, my spouse and I spent a good deal of time earlier this year trying to find a different affordable apartment in this neighborhood before giving up. So we need more housing options for people of all incomes and backgrounds so that our neighbors today and tomorrow can afford to live in this neighborhood. And the Era Linen Project is the right step in that direction, and that's why I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Let's
I
go.
don't see Lisa Maloof. I see Juan Maloof. Julio,
Yes, please.
I should call on,
Yes.
unmute him? Okay, give me one moment. Sorry, my screen's jumping all over the place.
No problem. I got it. Juan, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Unfortunately, my wife is not available, so we could pass on that. Thank you.
Okay.
The next one I have is Terrence Wilson. And I don't believe he's in the room.
Nope.
The next one I have is Beth Allen.
Beth is not on.
Okay. And then lastly, I have Roberto Barrios.
Roberto is not on.
Okay, that's first five. So maybe you want to go to the other list now?
Okay. So the first three names I have for public comment that I recorded are Salvatore Francino, Gregory Marvin, and Daryl Granger. We'll start with Salvatore Francino. Give me 1 second.
I got it, Julio. Salvatore, you can unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. Thank you so much. So, hello, I'm Sal Francino, and I'm a rent stabilized tenant in East Williamsburg, and I'm excited to speak in favor of the Era Linen rezoning because I like homes. I think more homes are good for society. And because I'm rent stabilized, I have rights and protections that many folks do not. And let it be known that the Era Linen project will include dozens of rent regulated, income restricted homes, and it'll give dozens of more people to have the same sort of protections and stability that I enjoy. And unfortunately, there are some alternate proposals that allege there'll be 100% affordable housing, but it seems to be like it's misinformation. There's no, backed up financing for it. It sounds like vaporware. Because we're in such a crisis of lack of housing right now, we need homes built. The sooner, the better. And this is a product that is ready to go. So I hope we can get on it and build more homes. And I do think that projects like this one are going to be crucial to keeping New York a dynamic city. And given that we have, 100,000 people living in homeless shelters, anything we can do to build more homes, especially in a spot where there are currently zero, and especially when we can have something like 50 to 60 rent stabilized homes, this is a slam dunk in a city that needs a lot more housing. So I'm really excited about this project. I want everyone to be excited about this project because we like homes We like tenant protections. We like rent stabilization for folks who are middle income, like teachers and nurses. So yeah, build some homes, yielding my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sal. Gregory Marvin. Gregory, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Oh, I think I just figured out how to unmute myself. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you.
My name is Greg. I'm a dad of a 9-month-old boy and a 3-year-old daughter, and a resident of Council Member Hanif's district. I want to start off by reminding our elected leaders who were present on Monday that the loudest voices in these forums are not representative of the majority in our neighborhoods. I nearly missed my daughter's school open house to be here because I want to try and correct this representational imbalance and advocate for the families that I talk to every day at daycare and school pickup, many of whom are renting apartments their families have outgrown, and nearly all of whom do not have time to show up at community meetings like this. Last decade, the number of jobs in this city increased 22%, while our housing stock only grew by 4%. As a result of this simple math, many are stuck in a game of musical chairs and have been priced out of homeownership, out of the city, or even out of starting a family. The population of children in NYC declined by nearly 200,000 in just the past 4 years. In a shortage, every additional chair in that game of musical chairs is precious. To block this project is to say no to 300 families who want to build a life here. To reduce the size of this project by 50 units is to say no to 50 families who are in need of housing and are asking to be your neighbor. This blighted industrial site near a subway station, impacting none of the historic brownstones we all love and cherish, is a rare and unique opportunity to instead say yes to families like mine, yes to families in the neighborhood, and yes to New Yorkers who desperately want to put roots here in Brooklyn. I have to say, I was dismayed by some of the behavior at Monday's session. I saw and see in the comments a lot of folks attempting to jeer and intimidate their own neighbors. People facing the anxiety of double-digit rent increases every year have the right to express their opinion. They have the right to join political groups that advocate for tenants, just as others have the right to join political groups very well represented here that advocate for homeowners and landlords who favor the conservative anti-housing policies that year after year have left Brooklyn renters high and dry. I hope that our elected leaders do the right thing and provide housing to the many rather than block housing on behalf of the loudest.
Thank you, Gregory. Next speaker, Daryl Granger.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yep. Go ahead, Daryl.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Daryl Granger, and I strongly support the Arrow Linen Project. Like a lot of people, I'm struggling to pay my rent and most certainly cannot afford to buy a home in Windsor Terrace. In fact, the other day I was looking on Zillow, and every home on the block surrounding this project where it's proposed is worth between $1.5 to $3 million. You can look it up yourself. That's insanity. These are the people who are opposing new affordable housing in this project. To make a 20% down payment on one of these multi-million-dollar homes, I would have to save up anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000. That's impossible because A, I'm not smart enough, and B, will never be successful enough to make that kind of money. Although I'll never be able to buy a home in Windsor Terrace, I am able to rent here. And a project like this is creating homes for younger people like me who want to stay in Brooklyn and raise a family here. I want to shop at local businesses. I want to spend my money in local businesses, at my local bodega, at the bars. I want to have my kids attend to local schools, and I want to be part of one of the most amazing communities in New York City. However, when I see these multimillionaire homeowners opposing these homes, they're basically telling me I'm not welcome. I'm not welcome in their community unless I can afford the price of admission, which is a $3 million home. It's modern day redlining. It's not being inclusive. It's being explicitly exclusive. Therefore, I ask the community board to please support this project to show that Brooklyn is welcoming to young and working class people and not just protect the property values of a handful of wealthy neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Before we continue, I'm just going to ask folks joining us virtually to please refrain from any disparaging comments reflected or towards any particular speaker. This is a public meeting. Anyone is welcome to speak before our board. They do not need to be a resident of this district, while I would hope that residents do join and do speak. So I'm just going to ask folks to refrain from any disparaging comments just towards any specific individual. And just to reiterate, if you're joining us and you would like to speak, you can use the raise hand feature. Those of you who have already raised your hand, I have you on a running list. We will go through them 3 at a time. Again, you can use the raised hand function. Before we continue, I do want to ask the presenters some questions from some board members. Is the purpose of this rezoning to alter the zoning because the owner wants to build the building designs that are being presented here? And who is the architect? So that's addressed to any of the presenters this evening. Nora, Andrew, Nelly.
The architect who Nelly represents is Caliendo Architects. And I'm sorry, Julio, the first question I see it on the screen is the purpose to alter the zoning. Is that the question you're inquiring
Yeah,
about?
sorry, I'm trying to get to the question.
I just wasn't totally clear. Can you repeat it or can we clarify?
Sure. It is the purpose of the rezoning to alter the zoning because the owner wants to build the building designs that are being presented here.
Correct.
Yes, I mean, the designs are still, preliminary, like these are not fully 100% designed buildings, but yes, that is the intention.
And when is the anticipated start date of construction if approved?
I don't know if you want to pull or if you're able to, Nora, so quickly in the EAS. I'm sure we have some, illustrative timelines, but just to add some context to it, upon hopefully a successful and effective rezoning, at that point, there's a process of formal construction document design, which does take several months in conjunction with financing and some other, pre-development activities, environmental, et cetera. And I see there's some questions about that. So if we assume the Euler process, just to give a high level understanding of the Euler process, meaning the public hearings from here on out, borough president, city planning commission, council member, et cetera, is another 6 to 9 months, before which construction drawings, environmental remediation, et cetera, commence. We're looking at groundbreaking no less than 12 to 18 months. But again, that's sort of a high level projection because there's still quite a lot of work to be done, but I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Jeremy, can you call the next 5 names from Monday, please?
You got it. The next 5 will be Kathy Scott, Ken A, just an A for the last name, William Montaigne, Chris Huntington, and Kate McCabe. So I have Kathy Scott first.
I don't think Kathy is here tonight.
I don't see her either. So after that would be Ken A. Again, I don't have a last name beyond that.
And there is no Ken here this evening.
Helpful. William Montaigne. Mantegna, M-A-N.
No, William.
Chris Huntington. I see him here. Chris, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you to CB7 for continuing this discussion. Julio and Jeremy, thank you for running the meeting. I first want to just note, Nora and Andrew, thank you for explaining in detail your plans. Very much appreciate the immense amount of work that you guys have put into this. I will be candid up front, though, that I am speaking in opposition of the plan as currently proposed. While I recognize all the efforts you've put into it to mitigate all sorts of issues from parking to stormwater runoff to making the buildings or try to make the buildings fit in with the surroundings. The fact is, this project, as it's currently proposed, is a huge overreach for what the neighborhood wants and needs. I'll be also candid. I'm part of the group from Housing Not High Rises. We've been characterized as NIMBYs and don't want people in there. And I would particularly address the testimony before of Gregory and Daryl. Gregory and Daryl, we want you guys to move into the neighborhood, okay? And we want housing on this site. Let me say that 3 times. We want housing on the Arrow Linen site. We want housing on the Arrow Linen site. What we want is housing that fits in the neighborhood, that is truly affordable, okay, and doesn't just check off an MIH box, and that doesn't loom over a neighborhood in such a way as to literally cast shadows over the place. So all we're asking for is something that's reasonable. Go down Prospect Avenue and look at what's being built at the Grand Prospect Ballroom site. Okay, that's a huge building with a ton of apartments that is not 150 feet up in the air. So it can be done. You guys can build something there that Gregory and Daryl could move their families into. We've come forward with a proposal with Catholic Charities and other groups, as Bobby Carroll mentioned, that are ready, willing, and able to build truly affordable housing. So I would say to Julio and to Jeremy and all the folks on CB7, look carefully at the options that are available to build housing in this neighborhood that is affordable, that fits in with the neighborhood, that is consistent with the contextual zoning that is part of this neighborhood, and make a rational decision. And so I would say to Nora, to Andrew, and to the Magliocos, come back with something that is reasonable. You guys will be heroes in this neighborhood. If you push through this thing, and if City of Yes adds another 3, 4, 5 stories to it, it's an overreach. We want housing. We want people in this neighborhood. We want something that fits in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I have Kate McCabe next. Kate, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can.
Can I turn on my camera?
Not at this time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kate McCabe. My husband, Sam, and I both grew up in Windsor Terrace, just around the corner from Arrow on 17th Street, between 9th and 10th Avenue. In my professional life, I work in affordable housing, and I am a proud member of Housing on High Rises. I love this neighborhood, and I think more people should get the chance to live here. And like other Brooklyn and New York City neighborhoods, we need more affordable housing here. But it cannot be an afterthought. It can't be just something a developer builds in order to get permission to build massive amounts of luxury housing like Arrow and Apex are doing here. We must be intentional about meeting the housing needs of our city. ULURP starts with the community board so that the voice of the community can inform the decision makers along the rest of the process. The borough president, the city planning commission, and of course, our local council member. I urge CB7 to respect that voice and to vote no on the rezoning resolution. I also urge you to issue a statement of support for the 100% affordable housing proposal on the table. I want to emphasize 2 reasons to vote no on the proposed rezoning. Number 1, The luxury proposal increases the risk of renter displacement. There are dozens of rental units next to and across the street from Arrow, including 59 rent stabilized units. There are 46 rental units in the rezoning area alone, including 6 rent stabilized units. All of these renters will be at risk of losing their homes because of massive real estate speculation if this rezoning goes through. Housing Not High Rise organized a meeting of renters this year. Our neighbors at that meeting spoke of their fear of losing their homes as they've seen happen in other neighborhoods. We cannot let that happen here. We should be creating more affordable housing, not endangering the housing that exists. Second, the community benefits that Arrow is offering are not benefits at all. As Arrow described tonight, they are planning to offer the space behind the 19-story towers to the public. Since Housing Not High Rise's first meeting with Councilmember Hanif, I have said that a shadowy sliver of land behind a tall building is not a benefit to this community. No one is going to want to hang out there, not the people who live in the buildings, and definitely not the neighbors. Second, we heard that Arrow may offer to donate a few $100,000 to the Prospect Park Alliance. At the same time, our back of the envelope estimate shows that this rezoning would generate $300 to $500 million of land value for the Magliocco family. Frankly, offering a few $100,000 in exchange for a few $100 million is an insult to the people of Windsor Terrace and South Slope. In closing, CB7 should disapprove the application, and my hope is that after they do, they will work with the community to give us the benefit we really want, 100% affordable contextual housing. Thank you so much, CB7, for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Our next speakers are Elizabeth Dennis, Ford Harris, and Matthew Dennis. Elizabeth, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Denny's. I'm a resident of Flatbush, and I live just on the other side of the boundary of Community District 7, literally a block away in Community District 14. I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the Arrow Linen rezoning. Like so many people here, I love my neighborhood of Flatbush, but I also really love being so close to Windsor Terrace and South Slope. I spend a lot of time biking up Prospect Park Southwest and enjoying a lot of the businesses along Prospect Park West, and also seeing friends and family in the area. And I also love that it's a community that has been accessible to people in all economic levels, but this is becoming less and less true. There's been no affordable housing in the area. There's been really very little housing at all built. And we need more housing of all kinds. And we need a lot more homes, and we need them in every neighborhood. When projects like this aren't built in wealthier areas of the city, like South Slope and Windsor Terrace, it doesn't only make it hard for families in South Slope and Windsor Terrace to find a place big enough for their family and stay in their neighborhood, or for their kids to find an apartment or a home to move to. It directly increases the pressure of the housing crisis on nearby neighborhoods like mine in Flatbush, where tenants are even more vulnerable. New York City planning data shows that the neighborhood tabulation area of Windsor Terrace and South Slope has a median income of 75% above the New York City-wide median income. 31.2% of residents in the area make over $200,000 a year, and only 27.4% of the area make less than or equal to the citywide median. This is a really, really important place to build housing. So that, because it is a wealthy neighborhood. And if you were worried about displacement, like many are, I would urge people to look at the city's Equitable Development Data Explorer map, equitableexplorer.planning.newyorkcity.gov. It shows that Park Slope and Windsor Terrace are at the, quote, lowest risk of displacement, making them particularly excellent sites for more housing, while the adjacent neighborhoods, including my neighborhood of Flatbush, nearby Kensington, and other parts of Community District 7, like Sunset Park, are all at the highest risk of displacement. This project is really, really important for making sure that that cycle doesn't continue. And there needs to be so many more homes built in this area. And I've heard a lot from both the meeting on Monday and otherwise that there's this idea of this fully affordable development to be built on this site. But realistically, there is no developer who's going to build it, and there's no funding for it. The funding that goes towards making deeper affordability throughout the city is very limited, and it is not targeted at wealthy areas like this one. And the people who say that we'll magically get this 100% affordable building here if we decrease the density of this plan, it's just misinformation. It's a pipe dream. And really, there's only three options. It stays as it is, and there's no housing built here. It becomes a small luxury building with lots of parking spaces, which they can do as of right without any rezoning. Or this rezoning gets passed and there's a thriving mixed income community that allows 250 more apartments of all sizes and prices, which would mean 250 more families can live in this wonderful area, many of whom may not, may already live here, but be being pushed out. I urge Community Board 7 to say no to displacement and to vote yes on this rezoning proposal. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Ford Harris.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for your time. One of the things I just think it's important for everyone to understand here is we are all in agreement, okay, that more housing needs to be built. And one of the things that I think is really troubling is we're letting the agenda of developers pit each other against one another, okay? So let me just respond to what the last person just said. This idea that the 100% affordable option is a pipe dream is not exactly true. It might just be a slower process, which I would say is important, because one of the things that we need to do, and that I would urge the community board to do when saying no to this proposal, is we need to take our time and not let the developers just ram these things down our throats. Because right now, what politicians are doing is they're acquiescing, when it comes to building affordable housing, they're acquiescing to the bottom line of developers, and the developers are dictating how the affordable housing is coming to us. Because what they're saying is, in order for me to make the profit that I want, we're going to have to build this thing yay high so that you get the affordable housing you want. So all the politicians are saying, all right, I want an affordable housing win, and I'm going to let this developer build as high and as big as they got to go because they need to make the money that they're saying they need to make. The thing is, it's up to the politicians to say, listen, developer, you're not necessarily going to make the obscene amount of money that you want to make, because what we want is a development that builds housing, that has affordable housing in it, but is contextual and fits our neighborhood from an infrastructural standpoint and an environmental standpoint. So at the end of the day, we're all in agreement that more housing needs to be built, but we can't let the developers just dictate what this huge development will be in our neighborhood, because we have to be beholden to their idea of what is a profitable development. So once again, to the community board, I would urge you to vote no to this proposal as it is currently proposed, because we cannot let developers dictate the scope of this project, because we're all pining so much for affordable housing. It's up to politicians to get a spine to turn to the developers and say, listen, we are not going to let you tell us what this development is just because you have a certain idea of how rich you want to be. That's not okay. So I would urge the community board to vote against this, and let's slowly figure out the best thing. Let's compromise, and let's come up with something that works for the neighborhood and that works for everybody that's on this call, because we all agree a lot more than we disagree. And we should focus on the things we agree on and not let developers get greedy off our backs and pit us against each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ford. Matthew Dennis.
Hello.
Hello. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Matthew Dennis, and I live just down the hill from the site for this project. Technically, my house is just a block outside of the community district 7, but of course I end up there all the time, whether I'm getting groceries or visiting several of my favorite restaurants in the city, or just on my way to Prospect Park, and I love this neighborhood. So I'd like to register my strong support for this project. It's a good project in general, but in the context of our housing shortage and affordability crisis, we need projects like this all over the city, and we need them sooner and not later. And clearly there's been a lot of public input on this project so far, but I'd like to highlight that one of the groups that's most affected isn't represented here, which is people who would live in these homes if they're approved. And obviously there's not a way to actually figure out who that is and talk to them, but we should keep them in mind. So if this project is not approved, some of the theoretical families who would live in the market rate units, it's not the end of the world for them. They probably have some money to spend and they could find a home somewhere else. But that means that we have a couple hundred more families that are competing for homes and bidding up prices in other parts of this neighborhood and further out in places like Flatbush and Kensington and Sunset Park, where we don't need prices to go up any more than they already have. And for the families that would live in the permanently affordable homes in this project, they presumably have far fewer options. So there's a risk of them getting pushed out of the neighborhood or even the city. And unfortunately, that happens all the time. So building these affordable units, having them be permanently affordable and available as soon as they can be is it's a really big win for this project. And I'd like to briefly address the supposed 100% affordable option that has come up a few times here. And it sounds nice on the face of it, but unfortunately it's just something that isn't actually real. It's not really a thing that would happen if we disapprove this project, because it would require subsidies that simply don't exist. And kind of the trade-off that exists in the kind of the way that things currently work in the city is you can finance a lot of affordable homes if you allow them to go along with market rate homes, and it is something that kind of pays for itself. And if you only build things that are 100% affordable, you have to find funding for them. And I mean, I would love to see more funding for affordable homes in the city, but we need everything we can get at the moment. So I urge you to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Before we continue, I'd just like to reiterate again, please refrain from disparaging comments directed to individuals speaking this evening. Everyone here is joining us because they'd like to provide public comment. Everyone would like to be heard. So I'm just asking folks to create that welcoming environment where people feel comfortable to speak. So I'm just asking again to please refrain from the disparaging comments directed toward individuals speaking this evening. And just a reminder, we are alternating between those who are raising their hand this evening and those who had signed up on Monday. With that, Jeremy, can you please read off the next 5 names from Monday, please?
You got it. I have Merrill Breitbart, who I don't believe is here. I have Michael Brennan, who I don't believe is here. Kevin Forsyth, who I saw. So let me unmute him. Kevin, you can unmute yourself.
Cool. Thank you. Hi, my name's Kevin. I'm a renter in the district, 20 years in Brooklyn. I'm not a member of Open New York or any other groups. I think on Monday, we heard how much this community really cares about affordable housing. I think we also unfortunately heard that the 100% affordable option may be ready and willing, but it's most certainly not able. There's no city subsidies. And because of this, I'm in favor of rezoning and construction. The Regional Plan Association projects that New York needs 473,000 more housing units by 2032. Unfortunately, New York City completed construction of 11,000 residential units in 2023. I don't think contextual housing matters, full stop. I think giving people homes matters. And I think it's important that we acknowledge what happens if we reject rezoning. Arrow would just build a row of ultra luxury townhouses. They have every right to do that. It's their land. We can't let perfect be the enemy of good here. This is a once in a generation opportunity to build a lot of housing that wouldn't displace a single person. We need to work with the only option for affordable housing we have, which is rezoning. I also kind of want to speak to some of the people who are opposing this, some of whom are really blowing up that chat box. I think to the longtime homeowners, all I can say is please listen to us when we tell you what it's like to try to find housing today. We aren't making it up. We're just your neighbors and we're having a hard time. I also want to acknowledge, without naming names, the makeup of some of the leaders of Housing Not High Rises. The city's mortgage data is public record. So I looked up the public faces of Housing Not High Rises, and I also looked up the purchase data of some of the homes on Windsor Place with signs in their windows. In short, these are multimillionaires who are putting selfish wants ahead of community needs. I will not name names, but one gentleman is a software developer and a former vice president at JP Morgan Chase. He bought a building on Windsor Place for about $1 million in 2004. Its estimated value is now $3.5 million. Another is a lawyer who bought for $2.2 million in 21. Another bought for $2.5 million in 21. Another inherited her apartment from her parents. Just make no mistake, These are multimillionaires who do not want a shady backyard for part of the day. That's it. And here's the thing. No matter what gets built, their property value will rise. They will be fine no matter what. Meanwhile, the rest of us need significantly more housing, and our community needs affordable options. So my ask to the community board is to think about the needs of the greater community, not the wants of the multimillionaires who live on Windsor Terrace. Let's be realistic about the only path to affordable housing. Let's prevent ultra luxury condos. Let's build affordable homes, and let's approve rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
I have Velma McKenzie next. Velma, you can unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Thanks for calling me. My comments will be short. I am a homeowner and I live near the Arrow site. I am also part of Housing Not High Rises. I live in a multi-generational household and I am for more housing in our neighborhood, and I am 100% for affordable housing. But this Arrow Linden project is not about affordable housing. My disagreement with this project is not about keeping people, especially young people, out of our neighborhood. Everyone is welcome, and we will welcome you when you arrive. I'm concerned for my neighbors, the neighbors that currently live in deeply affordable housing near the proposed site. And as much as our elected officials, especially our councilperson, has been saying to us that it will be difficult to dislocate these people and guarantee us that our neighbors will not be displaced, we know better. We have all seen this before. Developers will do anything they can to displace the neighbors and to make a buck, or in this case, a few million bucks. And that's what this project is about luxury towers to enrich the current landowner. Errol has hired lobbyists and lawyers to pave the way to win this windfall. And I can't help but feel a little sold out by our elected officials right now. If the community board really cares about affordable housing, I urge you to vote no on this project as it is presented. A vote no will provide the protection that is needed for our current neighbors that are living in affordable housing near this site. They need the protection. There should be housing on the Arrow site, but my goodness, 13 and 19 stories, as you're going to say, is more compatible with the neighborhood. That is not compatible with the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Velma.
The last one I have is Christina, for these five is Christina Scotti. I don't believe she's here.
Okay. The next three that we will hear from, Marlene Boccato, Jane Landis, and Chris Huntington. Marlene, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a prepared speech. I hardly know where to begin. I've lived here for 40 years. I bought my house for $100,000. I worked 2 jobs. I'm a retired nurse. I would like other people to have the opportunity that I had. Unfortunately, it's not possible. I couldn't live here if I were just moving in, but I do not think that Arrow Linen is going to solve everybody's problem. It might solve, as others have said, it will solve the developer's problem of amassing more money. I agree with high rises, housing, not high risers, that if possible, this should be a completely affordable housing unit. And I was very frankly upset to hear what the comment on Monday night about the older residents being against newcomers. That's absolutely incorrect. Well, there might be 1 or 2, but the rest of us aren't. And I, again, strongly implore the community board to take into consideration the effect. Have you ever tried to park your car in this neighborhood? Well, forget about having a car if this comes to be. And I will do whatever I can legally to block this proposal. Thank you.
I muted myself. Thank you, Marlene. Next, Jane Landis.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Jane. Oh. Let's try this one more time. Jane?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, there you go. I don't want to sound redundant, but some of the points that have already made also by the previous speaker, really express my views. I'm a homeowner. I bought the house with my husband 40 years ago. It took every penny we had. The house cost us less than $100,000. I know that this sounds like nothing to all of you now, but at the time it was a lot for us. I do have a daughter who is a renter in Windsor Terrace, and she worries all the time, what if it goes up? I won't be able to afford it. So I do have a lot of sympathy for the need for affordable housing. But again, I have to reflect to, reiterate what people have said. The scale is what is the problem. It's not that there is affordable housing. We would love to have affordable housing. I'd love to have my daughter get one of these apartments. That would be great. But why does it have to be so big? I mean, there was a big protest several years ago. Someone wanted to build a building that would have blocked the view of Minerva from Greenwood Cemetery. And a bunch of people got together and they were able to keep the zoning reasonable. In fact, that's why Fourth Avenue has become what it is now. But look at Fourth Avenue. I'm sorry, those buildings not only are unsightly, but they're so huge. There's no more sunlight on the street. I moved here. My husband and I moved here because we didn't want to stay in Manhattan. We wanted to be in a smaller neighborhood. We wanted some sunlight. We wanted a little backyard. That's not so much to ask. I don't know why some of these other developments weren't approached for an affordable housing. I was heartbroken when they knocked down the Prospect Hall because I thought it was an interesting building architecturally. But here they're building, again, luxury housing. The people who are buying houses now, they're asking 4 million for a house down our block. It's crazy. It's nuts. People just getting very, very greedy. So yes, please build affordable housing. But think about the people who are living here, the people who voted for all the politicians here. We want some protection ourselves. And again, I'm no millionaire. Trust me, we live below the poverty line. I'm semi-retired. It's just not fair to do this to people. And also the point about parking. Yeah, okay. If I'm in my 70s, I'm not going to ride a bike. I'm sorry, I'm too old for that. We need a car for occasional things. I mostly take the subway. I walk. But come on, where are all these cars going to park? Make it affordable, but make it low rise. We don't need any more high buildings. This is not Manhattan. This is Brooklyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. I believe we already heard from Chris Huntington. Jeremy, am I correct? Okay. And thank you for someone in the chat for pointing that out. The names are all starting to blur. Jeremy, can we go through the next 5 names, please?
Yep, I have Martin Cunningham next.
I don't believe
I
he's
don't
here.
believe he's here. I have James O'Day.
Not here.
Oh, I thought I saw him actually.
Oh,
yep, Jim. It's under Jim O'Day. So, Jim, you can speak now. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you for your care and concern about this important issue. I did a little research on zoning and I did a little research on community boards. And to net it out in one sentence, community boards are responsible for zoning that will preserve and protect the communities that they serve. That's the net. Those are the words that are used in the work that goes into the development historically of community boards, to preserve and protect the communities that they serve. And I beg you to do that. I want to address, just start off with one specific example that was a misrepresentation in my view. The presentation that was made tonight, by the way, did not appear on my screen, but on Monday, the rendering of the two buildings from the other side of the street that was provided is totally inaccurate. The street, which was described by the presenters as a wide street, the street that was used in the rendering was about as wide as a Los Angeles freeway. Prospect Avenue is a two-way street with parking. That's it. The next two-way street to the northeast is 9th Street, which is over a half a mile away. The next two-way street to the southwest is over a mile away on 39th Street. There are no two-way streets between the other end of Greenwood Cemetery and 9th Street except Prospect Avenue. The idea that a building of that size can fit into that space and not have such a dramatic effect on every aspect of life around it is crazy. Who's doing this environmental analysis? I can't imagine it. I just want to repeat about affordable housing. There are so many comments about that the affordable housing proposal is not real. Well, yes, it is. And not only that, but there are lots of other real affordable housing proposals that can be developed from people that care about preserving and protecting the community that we now have. I really don't know what else to say. The environmentals on this, they talked about sewage, they talked about water, they talked about power, talk about schools. We love people coming into this neighborhood. This neighborhood has always been a family neighborhood. We love families. Come, please. But make it a neighborhood worth living in for them that do come. And that means totally reject this greedy and ridiculous proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have Roger Melzer next. Roger, you could unmute yourself.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have been a resident and property owner in the South Slope, Windsor Terrace neighborhood since 1978. And very specifically, I have owned a rental building in Windsor Terrace since 1985. I am in favor of constructing housing on the Arrow Linen property, but totally opposed to the proposed rezoning that would allow 2 13 stories or even higher with City of Yes towers there. Arrow Linen has not paid property taxes in 25 years and may now has a zero cost basis in this property. So it is only selfish corporate greed that is motivating Arrow to build these enormous towers in a low-rise neighborhood. At the CB7 public hearing on September 9, there was much ado about the 61 affordable houses in the proposal, but nothing was presented on the 183 market rate apartments. I expect these rents would shock everyone if they were to be revealed and would be substantially higher than anything now being charged in Windsor Terrace by current homeowners. If CB7 is truly going to make a thorough evaluation of the Arrow Linen project and the overall impact on Windsor Terrace, then the projected free market rents on the 26 studios, 41 one-bedrooms, and 86 two-bedrooms, and 33 bedrooms should also be included in your investigation. Why is this important? Because the Arrow Linen project will set the tone for the Windsor Terrace rental market even before it is completed. And the sky-high rents at Arrow will be the driver for escalating rents throughout the neighborhood. The net overall effect will make renting in Windsor Terrace more expensive than ever. And it will be this project that does it. Do not make the mistake of thinking otherwise. Arrow has zero land cost, very rare for any development project. They can do much better and build 2 compatible, affordable buildings in this neighborhood that are not so offensive. I urge CB7 to reject this project as it has been presented to the community. And I want to add one more thing. If the key food that occupies the entire block front on Fifth Avenue between 43rd and 44th Streets, just below Sunset Park, were to propose building a 13-story tower there, the entire neighborhood from 39th Street to 59th Street would be outraged. This is how we feel about the Arrow Linen project in Windsor Terrace. It's just too big and too tall, and something much more compatible can be built in Windsor Terrace. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger.
I have Geraldine Cassini next. I don't believe she's here. And then I have Alexia Nazarian. Alexia, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Alexia Nazarian. I'm a resident of CB6 in Park Slope, just across the border in Councilmember Hanif's district. I'm excited to speak in favor of this project. I want to start by saying that one thing I find really difficult about conversations like this one is that the constituency who serves to benefit, right, the future residents of a development like this aren't here to speak in favor of the project. So I'd just like you to think of me as your potential neighbor just for a moment. Later this year, I'm expecting my first child. This is an exciting and admittedly somewhat uncertain time in my life. Right now, while the baby is an infant, we'll be okay in our apartment, but it won't be long before we need more space and have to face the rental market, which has a vacancy rate of 1.4%. I grew up in New Jersey, just across the George Washington Bridge, with dreams of living in the big city. I've lived in Brooklyn my entire adult life, and this is home. My husband is a fourth-generation New Yorker, and we want to raise our family here. But like many young families, we may not be able to. From 2020 to 2023, in just 3 years, the number of kids under 5 has declined by almost 20%. And unless each neighborhood does its part to welcome new neighbors, bit by bit, projects like this one, to build projects like the one proposed here tonight, I'm afraid this number will continue to grow and will be a city without families. I don't know if anyone's been to San Francisco lately, but it's grim. One thing I especially like about this proposal is the number of 2- and 3-bedroom units, which are hard to come by and important to keep families in Brooklyn. To those of you saying that you want more time, you want a smaller scale project, you may be familiar with the expression that time is money. The reality is that the longer it takes to get a building like this built, the more expensive, the higher rents the developer is going to have to ask for. We need more housing of all kinds. Yes, affordable housing, permanently affordable housing is terrific, and we all want that, but the market rate units matter too. The research is conclusive. Check out the Furman Center. Building more housing of all types reduces the pressure on skyrocketing rents, and this rezoning will provide new housing, new subsidized housing, and new market rate housing. This neighborhood has actually lost housing in recent years due to combining units. If this project and others like it don't get built, the neighborhood will change. It already is. People have talked about $4 million homes. If this project doesn't get built, Windsor Terrace will become increasingly unaffordable, which landlords love and homeowners will like too. And then Flatbush and Kensington, renters in lower income neighborhoods surrounding it will be priced out. I ask everyone to not be parochial. Let's care about our neighbors in these neighborhoods too.
Please wrap up.
Lastly, we have the infrastructure to build more. Schools in Windsor Terrace are under-enrolled. If
Please
that
wrap
keeps
up.
up, programs may be cut, and ridership on the F&G is below the pre-pandemic rate.
Thank you. Jeremy, any additional names?
That's 5 on my list.
Thank you. So we will go through 6 more names, 3 and 3, and then we will take a short 5-minute recess. So the next names, Sean McLaughlin, Stephanie Lazara, and Brian Aladort. Sean, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Sean McLaughlin, and I'm a resident of Crown Heights, just across the way. I'm a frequent visitor to Windsor Terrace, and my girlfriend and I have talked about aspiring to move to the neighborhood someday. But with the current housing shortage impacting all of New York City, that wouldn't be possible today or anytime soon. I believe that every neighborhood in New York needs to do their part to contribute to our city's housing needs. I've seen firsthand how the housing crisis has impacted my neighborhood here in Crown Heights. Residents here are more vulnerable to being displaced due to rising rents, while at the same time, our neighborhood is experiencing some of the highest rates of housing development in the city. Let me be really clear. When neighborhoods like Windsor Terrace block projects like these, they make their own neighborhoods more expensive and make other neighborhoods more expensive too, and contribute directly to the high cost of housing and displacement of residents across New York. As a previous speaker said, housing New Yorkers is far more important than contextual housing. I urge the community board to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for giving us 2 minutes. Moving on to Brian Alidor. Sorry, I lied. Stephanie Lazara.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Hi, I want to thank the community board for hearing me out. My name is Stephanie Lazara, and I wanted to give some perspective as someone who lives between the two Arrow buildings on Prospect Avenue. In full disclosure, I am a member of Housing Not High Rises. I rent. I have been living in Brooklyn for 26 years. I work in nonprofit and special education here in District 15. I've been renting here for 13 years, and I've raised my son in this apartment as a single mother on a nonprofit salary in special education, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose my apartment if this proposal goes through. As someone who's always worked in arts and education, I can't afford to live in a new high rent luxury building that's proposed to go up on my own street. So the reason I've been able to rent in my current apartment is because this particular area of Windsor Terrace and South Slope has some of the lowest naturally occurring rents in this area. My rent is not rent stabilized, nor is it Park Slope rental price. And I know that that is hard to imagine, but it's true on this particular block. I know what it's like to go through an affordable housing process and lottery. I've gone through it many times in my 26 years living here, and not once was I chosen or gotten through because of the small amount of the affordable apartments that are available, and it's demoralizing. I'll tell you, a few things cut as deep as the fear of losing your own home and having to move out of the community that you live in, not by choice, but because you can no longer fucking afford it. Sorry. This is exactly what I fear will happen to me, and I know it because it's happened to me in Park Slope in the late 90s when I first moved here as a dancer, and it happened to me again when I lived on the border of Kensington, Windsor Terrace, and huge luxury apartments went up, and guess what? Soon I could no longer live there. And I'm angry because it's happening again. So I've heard arguments on the other side that the community desperately needs housing at all price points. And this is so untrue. We desperately need housing for the middle to lower income earners. And there's no shortage of high price rentals. What is proposed to be built on Prospect Avenue on my block is not going to be affordable, period. It won't be affordable to our MTA bus drivers, who is my neighbor across the street, school teachers, that's myself, artists, nurses, aides, public service workers. This is me. This is who lives on my block. Another point I want to make is that preservation and change can coexist. I believe that the preservation of the neighborhood's existing residents and character, as well as increasing the housing inventory, is possible. Without upholding preservation, Brownstone Brooklyn would not be the Brownstone Brooklyn we know and love. Where are the guardrails? So Arrow reps would have you believe that if you are against the rezoning, we are against the change at all, and that's not true. I hate Arrow Linen. They keep me up at night. I can't sleep.
Please wrap up.
Sure. I am asking you to please vote no on the Arrow rezoning proposal and say yes to both preservation of our neighborhood
Please
and
wrap
the
up.
housing inventory. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, Brian Alidor. Brian, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Thanks, Stephanie. I'm sorry this is happening to you. Thank you to the board for doing this and listening to all of us. I'd just like to say, I'd like to urge you to really listen to the people that live in the neighborhood. I know that there are people that are saying they potentially want to move to this neighborhood, which I recently did, and I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. But one of the reasons why people want to move here is because people really care about the neighborhood, and it's for a lot of different reasons. And the context is super important. But I think people do want to welcome more people, and I think that the way that it's currently zoned would allow to welcome a good amount of new people, at least 250 people. And if you guys were going to approve, two new 13-story buildings, I would also urge you to require modifications to the plan or require some type of a legally binding requirement to help improve the infrastructure of the area to accommodate this surge of people that are going to come in. The sidewalks on Prospect Park West, the sewage, the draining. Nora mentioned that, what they have are plans and like they are subject to plan to change, which I totally understand. But I believe that kind of does open up the neighborhood to the will of the developers. And I would urge the board to really consider that once this free zoning does get approved, we're handing over a lot of power to the developers to do, what they want or what they think they legally have to do. And I would just try to keep in mind that think of the community and the people that live there, the people that want to live there. You don't want to change the neighborhood into something that people no longer want to move to because of what happens to the infrastructure once a giant building gets built where there was not a giant building before. And I would also just say that as much as the city needs affordable housing and more housing in general, I think it's not true that this site will solve all of the problems. So by voting to make it smaller or to not approve the rezoning, I don't think you're, ruining the entire city's future. So please consider an option going forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Before we move on to our three additional names, I do see a hand from Jeremy Kaplan. Did you have comment? Jeremy?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, hey. Yeah, I think we have to add a lot of important context here. As a rent stabilized tenant and living in Sunset Park, I think the important thing we hear about is housing crisis. The housing crisis is mainly about rents under $1,500. And I think that we see that market rate housing has had enormous impacts on neighborhoods wealthy like Park Slope when it came to the 4th Avenue rezoning and displacing a lot of rent stabilized tenants from that rezoning, which we lost 1,500 units of rent stabilization. So I look at sort of this conversation around, what is being offered. And to me, the 100% affordable housing is exactly what is needed for the housing crisis. And I believe, that there are a lot of options available, not just from Catholic Charities, but we have within CB7, two 100% affordable housing projects already that are on the ground. One of them already has housed people. So I think we need to stop with this notion. If we're in a housing crisis, we should be going for 100% affordable housing. So I think it's very frustrating and disingenuous to hear that this well thought out alternative plan is written up as a pipe dream. And yeah, I think when I look at these, two proposals, I also look at who the developer is and with very little track record. And I'm very curious why Arrow Linen has, gone to this developer who has no record of building affordable housing and their only track record is charter school development. To me, that also seems like a giant warning, red flag. And so, yeah, I have a lot of skepticism about this rezoning, and I see the 100% affordable housing proposal and see that as actually meeting the crisis and the understanding that, this is an affordability crisis and not an issue about building more market rate, which oftentimes can exacerbate the housing crisis.
Thank you, Jeremy. Moving up, sorry, I'm skipping. Jeremy, District Manager Jeremy, our next 5 names.
Thank you. Oh, 5. Okay, so the next one is Nicole Cartagena. Nicole, you can unmute yourself.
Students, we can talk about your sharing similar life experiences. We have a whole list of them.
Nicole, we can hear you. Are you testifying?
Hi, just 1 minute. I'm in the middle of a job.
Through the year.
I literally just jumped out of working from home, out of another Zoom to be here for this, to talk about this. I live next door to Arrow for the past 14 years, and I am strongly against this proposal, the way that it is established now. I absolutely want more housing. It is definitely a space that there should be housing built there. And at the same time, you can't minimize the perception of height when you have a 19-story building. You can't pretend that you don't see that it's 19 stories when you have shadows blocking the entire neighborhood. My biggest issue about this proposal is that it contradicts many of the sustainability initiatives that New York City has already established. Low-rise, high-density is the way forward in terms of city development of cities, not just in New York City, but around the world. And Windsor Terrace has the opportunity to be an actual example of high-density, low-rise buildings. You can't just put green windows on, energy windows and energy appliances, and that's more greenwashing. We need to lower the overall energy consumption of building construction overall in New York City. And New York City has a goal to reduce the carbon footprint of construction by 2033, and building multiple 19-story buildings on the block where the other buildings are 4 stories only is not a form of sustainable design and sustainable construction. We're also blocking the solar power potential for other neighbors in this community by blocking sunlight. You live in Windsor Terrace, you want to live in Windsor Terrace because it reminds you of Europe, because it's low rise, because you come here for the sky, you come here for the sun. That's why you want to live in a high rise. There are plenty of high rises going around. We're not talking enough about other forms of citizen development. Accessible dwelling units have just passed in New York City. If there is a garage that is filled with junk, it's not a garage filled with junk. It is now a 1-bedroom apartment. And New York City should be doing more to support accessible dwelling units, should be doing more to support co-housing. It should be doing more to allow tenants to buy out their buildings like we used to be able to do decades ago. We should be able to there should be financial and legal instruments to support people buying properties together. And so the people who are old school live in this neighborhood, they bought their houses a long time ago. They bought multifamily houses and they rented out the units upstairs. These are not millionaire people. The millionaires are coming into this neighborhood, gutting these multi-units, and then plugging in their Teslas out front. Those are the people who are not the folks who want to keep the sunshine in this neighborhood. Thank you all very much. Check out New York City's sustainability initiatives and see how this plan actually contradicts all of that. I live on the avenue. The traffic is horrible, horrible, horrible. My heart is in my mouth for my kid crossing the street every day. Thank you.
I have Douglas Hanno next. Douglas, you could unmute yourself.
Yes, good evening. My name is Douglas Hanau. I live in Brooklyn. I own a single family house. I've lived here for over 25 years. My parents came here from Europe after World War II. looking for an opportunity. They found it in a relatively new development that had been built. They were able to raise a family. In Queens, young people don't have that opportunity anymore in New York City. We're not building enough. We're not building in enough neighborhoods. My children who are just graduating college can't find places in this neighborhood. In Windsor Terrace, so they're renting in other communities like Bushwick and Ridgewood and placing pressure on those neighborhoods. We should be building Arrow Linen. We should be building in Cobble Hill. We should be building all over Brooklyn. Things change. The world changes. The Arrow Linen project will be one small step in creating more housing for New Yorkers, and that's what's needed. So people have the opportunity, like my parents did, and like I did. I did not build my house with sweat equity. I lucked out. I purchased a home a long time ago, and I hit the jackpot. That's all that happened. I didn't do anything. I didn't build a community. I lucked out. And I want all young people to have that same opportunity in New York. Move into a neighborhood, good neighborhood with good schools, and find a reasonable place to live. And without building more, that dream will never happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas.
Thank you. I have Joshua Waterman next. I don't believe he's here.
No.
And then I have Vishnu Reddy, who I don't believe is here. And then I have Howard Slatkin, who I don't believe is here.
Okay. Moving on to our next three speakers, Kevin Johnson, Camilla Jan Barr, and Christopher Miller.
Georgia. Yeah, he's Deshaun Watson.
Camilla, you can unmute yourself. Camilla? Jan Barr?
Hi, yes. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
All right, so my name's Camilla Yanbar. I am a lifelong resident of Windsor Terrace. My parents moved here in the 80s. I was born in the early 90s. And I cannot afford to live in this neighborhood without support from my parents. Neither can any of the people I knew growing up. And I fundamentally, the Arrow Linen project as proposed will not support me or my friends. It will exacerbate the problem that has forced us to leave this neighborhood unless we continue to live with our parents. And to be clear, I like my parents, but my partner and I would also maybe like to make our own life in this neighborhood or near this neighborhood without having to rely on that support. I feel afraid of what the proposed Arrow Linen project could do to this neighborhood. I feel deeply concerned about the long-term impact and the long-term accessibility of this neighborhood. These kinds of buildings, as we've seen repeatedly in Brooklyn, as I've witnessed over the course of my lifetime in Brooklyn, does not make neighborhoods more accessible. It does force people out. It does create a luxury housing market that is not accessible to people like me or the kind of people that we do want to be able to move to this neighborhood. I also am going to speak with my library educator hat on. I'm a K through 12 librarian. I find it interesting that the majority of the speakers in favor of the proposed construction tonight have had very similar talking points that willfully and intentionally misrepresents what Housing Not High Rises is asking. They are painting a picture as if we are against housing, against change, against mixed income housing, against opening the neighborhood to more residents, and that is entirely untrue. Multiple speakers have stated that that's not true. So I will not, draw conclusions, but as an information professional, I do want to note this trend of misinformation, and I find it interesting to observe. And yeah, I really hope that we can reach a resolution where there can be housing constructed on the Arrow Linen property. And it can be housing that is guaranteed to be affordable and accessible, but will be a smaller building that actually is constructed with the health of the neighborhood in mind and the needs of the people in this neighborhood in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Christopher Miller?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I am a young professional. I live near Bartell Pritchett Square, so just near the area. I'm actually not even sure if I'm in the district, but I'm in the area. I saw this. I heard about this proposal via a flyer on my apartment from Housing Not High Rises. So I am not affiliated with them. I'm also not affiliated with Open New York or any other lobbying agency. I'm just a guy. And I had very similar experiences, I guess, to some of the people who have talked previously, in terms of trying to find rent. I consider myself sort of a visitor to Brooklyn and to New York in general. I moved here about 2 years ago. And I probably won't be here for too much longer. But when we moved, it was extremely difficult for us to find our apartment. And it wasn't because of the lack of apartments, it was because of the cost. Yeah, you could look on Zillow or whatever, or on the other site that everyone uses, and you can start seeing everything that you're like, oh, this all looks great, and you move that rent slider down to what you can afford, and all this disappears. So I think really this is about, for me, leaving, at least my comments are about leaving something behind for the future of the community, because obviously I may not be here, but I would just urge the community to recognize that this is kind of part of the housing gold rush that's going on. It seems to me from everything I've heard, this is definitely an effort to find a windfall by Arrow Linen. And what's probably more needed is something more like an incremental improvement to the community, which honestly, if it's 100% affordable housing that can happen, great. But it doesn't seem like 60 out of 200 something units is really going to create a diverse community in terms of income. And actually, a comment in the chat just reminded me. So I really do, from Housing Not High Rises and anyone opposing this, I think the issue that arises is that there needs to be a real, I don't know, not real, because maybe it's Arrow Linen's choice of what they pursue, but there needs to be some strong pushback to anyone saying that things are unreasonable. A lot of data shared, a lot of actual, I don't know, things on paper shared to kind of combat the misinformation. And then that's my final statement. It is pretty wild that there's so much lobbying involved in a local thing like this. I'm actually flabbergasted at the amount of lobbyists who showed up to speak on this. I think it's just a warning sign.
Please
this
wrap
is
up.
probably not the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we continue, I'm noting the time is 8:07 p.m. I'd like to take a quick 5-minute recess to allow our board staff to use the restroom as well as myself, and we will reconvene at 8:11. Sorry, that's not proper math. 8:12 p.m. So we are going to reconvene in 5 minutes. Okay, the time is 8:12 p.m. We will resume our public testimony. And we're going to begin with the 5 remaining names from Monday.
Thank you. I have Ben Furness next. I don't believe Ben is here.
No.
Then I have Jeff Packman. And I don't believe he's here either. I have Connie Murray.
Connie is here. Connie, you can unmute yourself.
Hi. My name is Connie Murray. I am a resident, native New Yorker. I'm a resident of Long Island City, Queens. And I was there on Monday night. I also attended a meeting with you guys on in November. And I'm offering support to this community as they stand up to real estate development lobbying group Open New York. I've been observing Open New York for about 5 years now. I became acquainted with them when one of their members ran on a pro-Amazon platform against Senator Mike Gianaris here in Long Island City. Monday night, a lot of the narrative from that meeting, you guys have been reamed online for being the worst of humanity, for being like South African apartheid and for being like a Klan rally. So the way that this community, the voices of this community are being twisted for simply standing up to something that clearly isn't appropriate. And as Bobby Carroll mentioned, one option is to go back to the developer and say, hey, can you do better? That's what this community is asking for. This is not a bunch of NIMBYs who are racist. The maligning is wrong. It is unfair and it's dishonest. And if Open New York really cared about this community, they would partner with them. They would bring all the power and the influence and the money that they have to actually work with the community instead of alienating them. So I'm in Long Island City, and I can tell you guys that the first cut is the deepest. And when you have one tall tower, get ready for a whole family reunion of tall towers to follow. That's why it's really important to manage what comes into your neighborhood. And the city of yes, the fact that nothing has been solidified and you're really running a risk of this developer who clearly is shady, and they've only done charter schools. It is sort of odd that Arrow, that's the only developer that Arrow has connected with, and that's suspicious. So to this community, you are doing the right thing by criticizing this proposal and by standing up to this lobbying group, because they are not allies. And I've known that for years. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
I have Olivia Killingsworth next.
Hi, my name is Olivia Killingsworth, and I'm a resident of nearby Kensington, just across the border from CB7, where, like you, I am also represented by Councilmember Hanif and Assemblymember Carroll. I appreciate the opportunity to testify because, as our Assemblymember pointed out the other night, what you decide here will have ramifications for surrounding communities like mine. So that's why I'm urging you to approve this proposal, because we are in the middle of a historic housing shortage. We need more housing of all kinds, and we need a lot of it. When I bought my co-op apartment on Cortelli Road a couple years ago, after 15 years of being a tenant, I had to sign a lot of documents. I had a sale contract, proprietary lease, tax filings, etc. But nowhere on any of these papers was there any indication that by buying into the neighborhood, I was also buying a guarantee that it would never change. You can go on Acres and look, it's not there. And I'm frankly confused that some of my neighbors in Windsor Terrace seem to believe that they did receive that guarantee when they bought their properties. I'm disappointed in them and in my assembly member when they say they support new housing, just not here, just not like this. Because in a borough as blue as Brooklyn, this stance puts us out of step with the current Democratic nominee for president, Kamala Harris, who has acknowledged that we have a shortage of homes and that we need to build more. Now, we've heard tell of a 100% affordable housing plan for this site, but as Catholic Charities has testified, there is no serious offer on the table for that. And we've also heard from people with expertise in affordable housing development that deploying the millions of dollars of taxpayer-funded subsidy that would be necessary for such a building in a high-cost neighborhood like this one would be an extremely wasteful use of the limited public dollars we have available for such purposes. The last thing I'm going to say is that Shahana Hanif is not just my council member, she's my comrade. We are both members of the South Brooklyn branch of the New York City Democratic Socialists of America. That means that we believe that housing is a human right. But it also means that we recognize that while zoning laws, private developers, property owners may all be proximate contributing causes to our affordable housing shortage, the real cause is a system in which our leaders are unwilling to redistribute the necessary resources to provide a strong social safety net. It's caused by a system in which families are forced to compete against each other for private ownership over resources like housing and land to ensure our economic stability. It's caused by a system that refuses to provide enough public subsidy to bridge that gap between what it costs to build new housing and what people can actually pay. So if you think that system is wrong, I urge you, rather than support a reactionary and vicious campaign to block new housing, approve this proposal and instead join us in our statewide campaign to build social housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Jeremy, do we have any additional names?
Last one is Diane Hauk Johnson. Diane, you can unmute yourself.
Oh, hello, everyone. What a great meeting. Thank you so much, CB7. I left there on Monday and I had so much tension and I was rather upset by the blatant ageism that was shown to many of the long-term homeowners and residents of this very stable middle-class neighborhood. And again, I'm going to restate middle class. And the next day, I was shocked to see something in the Gothamist about a neighbor of mine who I've grown up with, who I've known all my life, was called wealthy. And I thought, well, I didn't know he was wealthy. I know he's middle class. The level of disinformation that the powers that be are pushing is incredible. And I hate to say it, on some level, they are accomplishing their goal to point us residents, long-term residents, short-term residents, as NIMBY and wealthy, not in my backyard, has been proven this evening by the testimony of the people who live in this neighborhood, who love Windsor Terrace. And to all of you who want to live here and afford to live here, we love Windsor Terrace. We want to live here. Will you love it so much after two 19-story, 200+ market rate apartments with no parking are built? When you're jammed onto your subway, when you have more flooding, will you love it so much? If you love it so much, don't ruin it. And what about flood mitigation? We're already suffering due to climate change. They put that thing in and everybody downstream. There was a gentleman who spoke at one of the meetings in the spring, and he said he's already suffering from flooding. What is their flood mitigation? They said something about, oh, we're going to put in some grass. I want to thank Robert Carroll, who is invested in his district and his constituency. He knows them, he respects them, and he hears them. We need compromise and contextual building. Please keep that in mind. Please don't ruin our neighborhood. And what about flipping it? Make it 50-50. Make it 50 market, which in fact is almost luxury, and 50% affordable. Look at it. Let's compromise. But I do so much thank Robert Carroll for understanding and respecting his constituency. And thank you so much, CB7, for this platform.
Thank you.
Julio, that was the last of the people who signed up on Monday. Now we just have this evening's list.
Thank you. The next three names on the list are Katie Vasson, Alex P., and Ruben Jackson. And again, if you have already spoken, please, I would kindly ask that you lower your hand so we don't confuse them with those who have not spoken yet. Katie?
My name's Katie. I live in the neighborhood. I'm young. I'm an artist and freelancer, and I live with my husband. And we agree we need more housing and we need more affordable housing. And I just want to say, I love this neighborhood. I asked the community board to vote no on the rezoning proposal. First, we need a developer that has experience in cleaning up contaminated land, both for the potential residents and surrounding neighbors. As Robert Carroll mentioned on Monday, that is kind of gotten lost in the conversation, but that land is contaminated from 100 years of Arrow Linen owning it. I also just want to invite us all to take a step back and look at what's happening all over the city when high rises get the go ahead. I mean, several people, this has been mentioned all night, but neighborhoods transform overnight and not for the better. More expensive high rises, luxury apartments, constant construction with little infrastructure to support it. And we will lose what brought us here in the first place, a neighborhood. Who will profit the most here? Developers and the people selling their land. There has to be a compromise here, one that builds more affordable housing and at scale with the neighborhood. Please, I ask the board to choose people over profit. Vote no on the rezoning proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Alex P.
Hi, thank you. Sorry, it took me a moment. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hello, members of Community Board 7. Thank you for this meeting and for the additional opportunity to hear commentary from your neighbors here in Windsor Terrace. My name is Alex. I'm a 21-year and counting resident of Windsor Terrace. I've lived in multiple apartments in all corners of Windsor Terrace, including my first apartment where I lived on Prospect Park West, very close to the Arrow Linen site. I can tell you I heard the dinging from their loading docks every day for 5 years. I love all my neighbors here, but I'll be honest, they weren't the best of them. I am speaking tonight in favor of affordable housing. And by affordable housing, I mean 100% affordable housing, like the project that Catholic Charities would be able to build with 265 units of all affordable housing versus 61 units. That's 200 plus more units. I think we can all agree that this neighborhood needs more affordable housing. What I don't understand is why so many people are going so hard for a project with less affordable housing and more market rate, or let's be honest, luxury housing. Why are these people in favor of prioritizing profits for Arrow Linen and their inexperienced developers who have never done a residential project, by the way, over engaging with a nonprofit to build more housing? Catholic Charities has built and administered many successful affordable housing projects, including the neighboring Bishop Boardman's Apartments, which has been part of this community for decades. If anyone can do affordable housing and do it right, they can. It's interesting to me that there's so many people tonight speaking from outside of Windsor Terrace. I understand this is public commentary and that is their right, but I hope as our community board representatives, you give the weight to the voices of the people that actually live here. I strongly disagree that the people most affected by this are the people who might want to live here versus the people who actually live here. The statistical likelihood of any of the people on the call getting one of those 61 apartments is slim to none. With 100% affordable development, those odds actually go up. I'd like to also acknowledge what strikes me as problematic is the intimation and outright accusation that the people who live in Windsor Terrace are multimillionaire gatekeepers. For many of you who haven't lived in this neighborhood for decades, maybe you're aware that Windsor Terrace has historically been a working class neighborhood. Longtime residents' families have been here from 50 to 100 plus years. Windsor Terrace is a neighborhood where firefighters, teachers, nurses, sanitation workers, and city workers like my husband, who keep New York running, live. Many of these quote unquote millionaires are actually house rich and living on a fixed income, and I'm not one of the people that houses. I've known many families who have fallen on hard times and have no option but to sell their house to outside speculators and give up their homes and lifetime ties to the neighborhood. This zoning change is going to create a precedent that will only encourage more and larger development throughout the neighborhood, and be assured that those will be majority luxury units that will further drive up market rates. So we'll be privileging a select few who draw a winning lottery number and also driving out more longtime residents. As it stands, Arrow Linen has enjoyed a tax abatement for their current location for years. That abatement is expiring, and now they're getting ready to leave us holding the bag and take their millions. As a final note, let's be respectful to all. Windsor Terrace has always been a welcoming community. We need more affordable housing, truly affordable. A vote for no with a recommendation that Arrow Linen actually engage with a nonprofit developer would be taking a stand to show that we as a city value people over profits. Thank you. I appreciate the extra time.
Thank you. Next, we have Ruben Jackson, followed by Sarah Harnasowitz and Jay Goldberg. Ruben, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. This is really great to have the opportunity to speak as a resident of the community board, the neighborhood, Windsor Terrace. I can't, as I am an architect, I can't actually believe that such a massive rezoning is being proposed in our neighborhood. I look around at a status quo that has we have a huge housing problem, amazingly high rents, and a population that's basically flat from 10 years ago. And I don't understand why that doesn't get more play, and that just building more housing doesn't exactly seem to work to lower rents. So I would question a lot of the motivation here, a lot of the things spoken by pro-development lobbyists that are attending this meeting as well. There's definitely a lot of agenda. There's an amazing amount of profit, obviously being held, at stake in this. And what's lost is the character of our neighborhood. There's a lot of problems that people before me have really highlighted much better than I need to do now. I just wanted to, as a resident, vocalize that this is an undemocratic, greedy way to create more development. It's going to look like a piece of Fourth Avenue has washed up the hill. I don't think Fourth Avenue is a huge success in my mind, and it hasn't lowered rents in Park Slope, which is our richer neighbor community. Carroll Gardens as well. The Gowanus, you have thousands of more units going up down there, right at sea level. I really question the leadership of the government that puts that usurps the zoning and makes these things happen. I understand the motivations are good. I'd like to think that, but I really think that this has to be carefully considered before it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Sarah Karnasowitz, apologies if I mispronounced that name.
Hi, thank you so much. I just want to point out that the vast majority of pro speakers tonight have been lobbyists. I have no financial incentive here, but I live in the neighborhood. I've been here for about 5 years. And I just want to share some thoughts from someone who's been through a situation like this before. You might anticipate that building an enormous high-rise like this would cause a lot of noise. Even construction workers don't carpool, so goodbye parking spaces. But there are a few things you might not realize. If this upzoning gets approved, the entire length of Prospect Avenue will be at risk. This will take a lot longer than you expect. You need to think decades, not years. And you and your children will spend those decades breathing in toxins. In order to build up 12, 15, 20 stories, whatever this ends up being, developers first have to dig down, a long way down. And when they do, it turns up all kinds of toxins and heavy metals in the soil. The Arrow Laundry site is a particularly noxious example, but it's hardly an exception. Remember, this entire neighborhood was built at the turn of the century before a progressive era when there was little regulation. You can research the soil composition of Prospect Park. And when demolition begins, those toxins will show up in your kids' blood work. You'll not only be breathing it in, you'll be seeing it. It'll be a miasma that continues as long as construction continues. And people can scoff about neighborhood concerns about a domino effect of upzoning and a Wild West developer land grab, but it's very real and very destructive, and I witnessed it firsthand. From 2011 through 2019, my husband and my son and I lived on the fringes of Gowanus and South Slope in a home about 2 doors in from 4th Avenue. And during that first year, developers systematically bought out an unbroken row of around 1870 4-story row houses behind us. It wasn't an industrial lot or an old auto body shop that could be put to better use. And initially, we supported the project. But we watched as dozens of residents who had been in rent-stabilized apartments for decades were displaced. The developer's stated goal was to build 2 12-story residential towers with, of course, whatever token percentage of affordable housing would get approved. 8 years later, when we moved, the buildings remained unfinished, and to my knowledge, they have still never been filled as planned. In the interim, living in the middle of unchecked development like that was a daily misery. Similar projects were happening on all the blocks around us. Because insufficient attention was paid to drainage and infrastructure, flooding was constant. The rat population exploded. Remediation consisted of tarps and piles of contractors' bags. It was a joke. In the project behind our house, after a hasty demolition, the bare lot sat empty for well over a year. Squatters threw parties. The quality of construction we witnessed was terrifying. There appeared to be zero enforcement of safety standards.
Please wrap
We
up.
didn't open our window for years. We know an upzoning list will radically change the character
Sarah?
of the neighborhood. Whether it's a necessity is a matter of debate, but the reality is that it's going to deeply impact the quality of life in the meantime for
Thank you, Sarah.
everyone involved.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next speaker is Jay Goldberg, followed by Susan Valenti and Sadia Khalid. Jay, you can speak. Let's try this again. Go ahead, Jay. Jay, you can unmute yourself. Going once, twice for Jay Goldberg. Okay, moving on to Susan Valenti.
Hi there. Thank you. I don't have a prepared statement, but we moved into Windsor Terrace 36 years ago and raised our 2 kids here. And like other people who've said, they can't afford to rent here either. So my son is moving out to outside of the city. I understand that. But I'm confused when I keep hearing people talking about we need to build to solve this problem, because in the 36 years that I've been here, in the last 10 or so years, I've never seen such building in the area. I've never seen so many buildings going up. And people keep saying that there's still a problem. So I don't understand that. Are those buildings empty? Are those buildings filled? I don't get it. And one of my biggest problems is that, we live in one of the highest points in Brooklyn, and yet we have such anxiety every time we get a forecast for rain because our basements flood and the sewers back up. And the DEP has told us that they have no plans to improve the infrastructure, the sewer systems around here. It could take years and years and years before that happens. Additionally, on Prospect Avenue, there are many sinkholes, and I don't understand if they've done an impact. I've asked if there's been an environmental impact study done to address the fact that there's these sinkholes on Prospect Avenue and whether or not this building could even be sustained on such a spot. I know from the old timers who I respected when I moved in here 36 years ago, they told us the stories that there's aquifers that run. There's a whole series of river kind of things underneath the area. And if they're going to be digging down to put in this building and for remediation, what are they going to find? And I really would like to know if there's going to be a serious environmental impact study to address these issues, because if you bring in 200 more units and hundreds of more residents into an area that can't be sustained already with the infrastructure, what does that do to the neighborhood? It has nothing to do with whether or not we want to welcome new neighbors. We'd happily welcome new neighbors. I was welcomed. I know how this neighborhood is. It's a very welcoming neighborhood. But if we can't sustain it infrastructurally, I don't see the point of putting in this huge building. It worries me.
Thank you, Susan.
Mhm.
Moving on to Sadia.
Hi.
Hi, Sadia, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julio, and to the rest of the community board members.
The first thing I want to say is that I'm deeply disturbed by the antagonism towards residents of this community during both this meeting and the one on Monday. And I'm left wondering, do the people who are advocating for this plan want to be our neighbors or want to colonize our neighborhood because they have the resources and wealth with which to do so? I have lived on the same block in South Slope for my entire life, and the only reason that I'm able to continue to live on my block is because my immigrant father was able to save his way into buying a house in the early 80s for our whole extended immigrant family to live in. If that were not the reality, I would have been priced out of my home years ago, and it's not because of too much affordable housing being built in the neighborhood, it's the direct result of too much unaffordable housing being built that I and my family could never dream of accessing. It's the direct result of gentrification, predatory developers, and speculative real estate. In the last 20 years, particularly, I've seen nothing but my working class immigrant neighbors pushed out of their homes and my street become less and less diverse in race, in ethnicity, and class status. The narrative of nearly every single person who has spoken in favor of this proposal would have us believe that they were advocating on behalf of equity and access. And the problem is that I'm fairly certain the only access they're concerned about is their personal access to any neighborhood they desire. And they don't seem to care if it comes at the cost of the people who live here. And the flat narrative of who is for and against this project is demeaning, offensive, dishonest, and ignorant. And I frankly resent it. The ageism, the classism, the implications of xenophobia, and the co-opting of the language of inclusion in order to sell us on a bad deal is disgraceful. Contrary to what some would have us think, working class people of color do live here, and we matter. If we were actually concerned about the housing crisis in this city, we should be concerned with those of us who have the least access to housing, those who are most affected by the housing crisis, such as the elderly, the unhoused, the recently incarcerated, new arrivals to this country through migration and asylum seeking, and Black, Latinx, and Indigenous community members. To the members of the community board, please be in solidarity with us, not in the pockets of big developers who want to take our communities to the cleaners. The people who live here have the most to gain and the most to lose from this deal. Listen to us when we say we want more for our community. Please listen to us when we say we deserve better. Arrow Linen is asking for a favor. They could sell or develop their site under the current zoning right now if they wish to, but they want to maximize their profit. So they're asking us for something. Doesn't that give us the leverage and the bargaining chips? Why is anyone supporting a rotten first offer? And why are we doing so without true transparency and oversight? The burden is on Arrow Linen and their associates to sell us on their plans. They've done a horrible job of that, but some of us are either so used to being powerless that we accept the bare minimum, or we are those who would be able to access the luxury units that this plan offers. I've heard zero testimony from the associates of Arrow Linen that has convinced me that this is a plan that takes equity, infrastructure, environmental impacts, and sustainability into account. We should reject it on its face and ask Arrow Linen to come back to the table with something worth the paper it is written on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sadia. Next speaker are Moses Gates, followed by Nina Soliopoulos and Jack Walsh. Moses, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks very much. My name is Moses Gates. My stepkid goes to PS10. I walk by the Arrow Linen site 3 times a week, taking him there or bringing him back home. And PS10, the enrollment it's a great school. Shout out Mrs. Williams. Very happy that he goes there. And enrollment's down 14%. Enrollment's down 14% in District 15 overall. And I don't understand how people can begrudge other folks building housing for other folks to move into the neighborhood. And you know, as far as deals go, I think it's great if people can get more affordable housing out of this deal, but I urge people to do it at the expense of the luxury housing, not at the expense of the housing overall. Not building less housing, but taking the housing we're building and making it more affordable. And as far, I've heard a lot of speakers talk about how the neighborhood has gotten more and more unaffordable and how their block has gotten more and more unaffordable. And I've lived in New York for 24 years and I've experienced that. And in Sunset Park a long time ago, I got kicked out of my house because of the rent raises. Nobody built anything on that block. A lot of the blocks that people are talking about getting expensive, nobody's built anything on them. So I don't understand how we can say, oh, that's not a cause that we don't build anything on the block, because obviously not building housing in this neighborhood, and this neighborhood has not added any housing. That's not working. So I'd urge folks to really be welcoming, try to think of solutions. If there's compromises to be made, I wholeheartedly support that. But I urge people to think about that and how we can build more housing and get more neighbors. And I appreciate that the neighborhood is welcoming. But welcoming where? You can say you're welcoming people and that we want more people here and everybody is welcome. But if there's no, where are they going? Are they going to your house? Like, if you don't build more housing, you can say you're welcoming, but are you really? It's easy to say. And it's harder to actually do things about it. So thank you for allowing me to testify.
Thank you, Moses. Nina? You should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks so much to the board and everyone for being here and providing their testimony. My name is Nina Suliopoulos. I'm not affiliated with any organization. I live in Windsor Terrace on Prospect Avenue, just about 2 blocks from the Aero sites. And I've been living here for about 5 years. I respectfully agree with most of my neighbors, right, that this proposal doesn't appear to be the best way forward for the neighborhood. Just first and foremost, what sticks out, like 60 units only of around 250 being affordable. I just really don't think that that's good enough. This is the city of New York, and we are in my opinion, right, the best borough of the city of New York here in Brooklyn. And I believe that we can and we need to do better. I also lived on 4th Avenue previously in Gowanus, and that rezoning was really awful. In fact, like others testified earlier, I ended up here in Windsor Terrace, thankfully, following that other rezoning on 4th Avenue in Gowanus. And I just really sincerely hope that the board gives the due weight to the community's opinions, puts people over profit, and stands up to these developers and very clearly moneyed interests. And just to be clear, I am not against any affordable housing. In fact, I'm much more of the mind that we should have closer to 100% affordable housing of whatever goes there. I don't think that building more of this, luxury housing, the 60 to 250 ratio is really going to help bring down any of the prices for us renting. And also, to be clear, I'm also a renter. So I really care deeply about this, and I really hope that the board listens to the community's input here. Thanks so much. Have a nice night.
Thank you, Nina. Our next speaker is Jack Walsh, followed by Kevin Johnson, and then Jeanette Alexander. There we go, Jack. Jack Walsh. Oh, there's multiple Jack Walshes. There's 3 Jack Walshes. Will the real Jack Walsh please raise your hand?
Hello,
Yes, Jack.
this is actually Martin Cottingham. I was using Jack's email, so sorry about that. Can you hear me? It's Martin Cottingham. Good evening.
Go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for the good work on this. Again, my name is Martin Cottingham. I grew up at 15 Howard Place. I'm a proud member of Housing Not High Rises. My great-grandfather, Richie Trapp, bought his house at 15 Howard Place which was built in 1917. My mother worked at PS10, and my father was the famous local sanitation man. I lived within 2 blocks from the site my whole life. For decades, many of our family lived within a block of one another. Unfortunately, many left due to quality of life concerns in the 70s and 80s, and many more were forced out to leave due to affordability issues. As an aside, I've been in the commercial real estate business for 30 years. I know what it takes to build successful projects where all parties can win. Professionally, I was a team leader that built the Bear Stearns headquarters. Later on, I led the Coney Island Amphitheater Affordable Housing Development Project. As a neighborhood volunteer and board chair of Prospect Park YMCA, I was responsible for the aquatic center and the Park Slope Armory, all of which required community input and support. Based on my experience, projects like this one proposed by Arrow destroy neighborhoods. This project does not assist in the affordability concerns we all have. It just exasperates the issue. This project will turn Prospect Avenue into 4th Avenue, or worse, Manhattan, a place where only the super wealthy can live in luxury high-rises. To all my neighbors that are not familiar with what happened on 4th Avenue, developers from all over the country swooped down and assembled buildings and lots along this corridor, and all of the renters were pushed out. I know this because I had family along that corridor. The community board has a tremendous opportunity to develop something different. We can develop an affordable, 100% affordable project, and this project can be the model for all of New York City. Let's work together to make it happen. To my friendly neighbors, if the community board and the council member supported 100% affordable housing, we could have term sheets in a couple of weeks. I urge you to vote no on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Johnson. Kevin, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I lowered my
Okay.
I lowered my hand. I don't wish to speak.
Thank you. Jeanette Alexander.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Emily Alexander. I'm the daughter of Jeanette Alexander, and I live on 17th Street, right around the corner from the Arrow Linen Project. I want to first and foremost reiterate that every neighbor that I've spoken to is 100% in favor of having more housing in this neighborhood. The concern is, as mentioned, with the affordability and with the scale. I think it's incredibly difficult to understand what a 13-story building would look and feel like when all of the buildings next door are about 4 or 5 stories. It's unimaginable to fully understand what that would look like and do to our community until it would happen. To the woman who spoke earlier, who lives in Kensington, I encourage you to, the next time you are walking down the main street in Kensington by the Poetica, if you turn your head, you will see a massive apartment building that's around, I think, 12 or 13 floors. As mentioned, we're all for housing, but the scale is what is going to make or break our neighborhood. And as you see in Kensington, that building really stands out like a sore thumb. This is often being compared to 4th Avenue, and I just want to reiterate that this project is happening on our main street. There's a very big difference between the atmosphere of 4th Avenue and Prospect Park West. And this is going, if the scale is above 7, 8 stories, it's really going to destroy the charm and the community that everybody is here for. And since Arrow Linen has been here for over 30 years, they are very familiar with this community. They know that this community is incredibly welcoming, everybody I met here is such lovely people. And it's a sign of respect to the people who live here and our neighbors to be considerate of how many stories this building is. It's a sign of respect for that, from them to us, from neighbors to neighbors. And I really urge the developers who likely live in Manhattan in their penthouses to understand that the people in this community are going to be dealing with the ramifications of this day in and day out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, Martha Rose, followed by Thomas Cox and Maria Scarvoloni. Martha?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I live in the neighborhood. I'm goodness, hold on. I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in Queens and I moved into the neighborhood about 35 years ago. And I have moved about 6 times because I was a renter. And the last time that I was evicted, it was on, they told me to move on December 24th. And the only person who was able to help me put that off during COVID for months was Bobby Carroll. So I really respect him and I really appreciate what he did and his proposal that he made in the meeting on Monday. And I am for development, like a lot of people have said, but I think it needs to be at a scale that is proportionate to the buildings and the community. And even 8 stories is a lot. I moved to Park Slope. You know, I was at 2nd Street, I was at Carroll Street, I was on 8th Avenue. And the last developer told me when I said it was put all of his demands in writing, everything this guy wanted, it violated New York City housing code. And I'm really appalled that, you know, right now people are considering changing the housing code for this company that, from what I'm gathering and learning, has not really paid their taxes the past bunch of years, and it could be toxic. And I did some work for Forest City Radnor years ago on, you know, financial work, you know, computer work. And, you know, these people are developers and they view it as a cost benefit analysis. And, you know, unfortunately, they'll put the money, you know, they'll do what it takes for them to get their money, but not what we in the neighborhood need. And I really feel in the neighborhood, we need some place that can be viable for the community where there's a lot more subsidized housing. Market rate is not affordable. There is tons of market rate housing that is unfilled, both on 4th Avenue, as people has pointed out, and in Manhattan. There's tons all over the place. I don't even know who wants to live in Gowanus. It's polluted. But I just feel it's wrong to build something out of scale with the neighborhood. And yeah, and I came to the other hearing. I mean, I'm down on right now on Vanderbilt Place. I was lucky enough to buy a co-op of Mitchell Lama housing. And unfortunately, even though Mitchell Lama really doesn't exist much nowadays, that's the kind of housing we need, affordable housing that can be for people like us who work in the city. I work at John Jay College. You know, I went to New York City public schools. You know, yes, I did get education outside the city, didn't live here for a while, but that's the kind of people that need housing. And it took me almost a year to find something. And I was lucky enough to find some place in Windsor Terrace, and they accepted me into this co-op. You know, it's very hard to do. So I really think we need to help people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Thomas, followed by Maria Scarvoloni and Bruno Gransard. Thomas, you can unmute yourself. Oh. Let's try this one more time, Thomas. Sorry, that was my fault.
All right. I have 2 minutes.
3 minutes, go.
Oh, okay. I'll make it, I want to thank you for having this meeting as a follow-up to the one on Monday night. But if there was a way to make this proposal truly valuable and of help to the community, it would include the minimum parking requirement, which it seeks not to have. It would include a reduction of the 13, but now 19 stories. It was 13 back in December. I don't know what, you know, they'll keep adding on, I suppose. But now they still need the required number of affordable rents. The Prospect rezoning doesn't meet up with these standards. Prospect Avenue rezoning. So I don't see any compelling reasons why this request for a special permit to amend existing zoning law should be approved by the community board. I appreciate the reasons and feelings cited by many people last Monday night, but let me mention a couple of them that I'd like to, talk about. The proposal, number 1, provides for building up to height as per right, and those apartment units would be at market rate. Market rate, I think, means higher rents than we're normally used to. Market rate means luxury. 75 of the units under the proposal now means that they will be market rate. That leaves a few for the affordable rate. So the proposal hopes to add more so that they can get those 75, they can get those luxury units. They could do a better job at including more affordability in the other units besides the market. I think that's what they want above all. Number two, we need to think about the effect on the environment, and people have been mentioning that. But think of the influx of, I don't know, there's 244 units that were talked about. That might mean 400, 500 people. They're going to be coming in. They'll be on the sidewalks. They will be in the subway station. They will be in the stores. All right, maybe some stores will open up to accommodate, but it's not going to be easy. Then there's the water, as mentioned. You know, I live on 17th Street. There's a water table problem. We got flooding on both sides of me, the three houses in a row. We got flooding all the time in heavy rains, and people have talked about the problem of the water that was been used by Arrow. But here's the question: have we looked at what the costs, or will the proposal actually say what costs there would be in hooking them up and to providing the electric, et cetera, et cetera? But as to the environment, we can't, these units are going to bring huge numbers of cars compared to what we suffer today.
Please wrap up.
Okay. I just think also we need to keep the character of the community. And in conclusion, they don't provide enough affordable units, and it shouldn't be approved at this point.
Thank you, Thomas. Maria Scarvoloni, followed by Bruno, and then Rami.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I've been a Windsor Terrace resident for the last 35 years, and I chose Windsor Terrace when I couldn't afford to live elsewhere. You know, when it was a sleepy neighborhood no one knew, and my husband and I have happily raised our two children here. I can assure you we're not all millionaires here, and I can assure you as well that we are all for affordable housing in the area. So this argument that we are, that this is a NIMBY issue and that people don't want development and we don't want scary newcomers coming in is simply false. And I believe it's a disingenuous attempt to divide us. The other point I want to make is that, what people are opposing is the extreme height of the towers, which will mar the cityscape and bring density to the neighborhood that it just can't support. And the argument people are making now is not one about affordable housing, the people who are for the project, but one for just more housing in general, whether it's affordable or not. And they point to a Furman Center study, that says that, more supply, greater supply will decrease prices. Well, there are other analyses that say the opposite. There's one, for example, by Village Presentation, which is an organization fighting to protect parts of Lower Manhattan. And it maintains that that is not true. According to its analysis, in the last 60 years, not only has housing unit growth kept up with population growth in New York City, it's actually exceeded it. And the high cost of housing in New York City is therefore not a result of too short a supply. And more likely it's due to the wrong type of housing being developed, expensive units New Yorkers can't afford, and to the loss of existing affordable units, with the loss of rent stabilized units, for example, and to our high construction costs. And this, personally jives with what I have seen in Williamsburg, for example. Hundreds, if not thousands of units have been built in the last decade, and yet housing prices there have skyrocketed. So before we all buy into this theory that our housing woes would be solved if we only built more and more, let's consider who is promoting this trickle-down idea, who funds these organizations and sits on their boards, what objective analysis has taken place, and does this supply and demand argument actually hold water? Let's do everything we can to throw our support behind the nonprofit plan for more units that are 100% affordable and preserve what makes our neighborhoods special. This is really the main issue I think that we have to confront. It is not a given that a greater supply is going to automatically bring down housing costs in this city. Please. Thank you very much.
Bruno? Bruno, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Excellent. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you, CB7, for conducting this hearing. Much appreciated. My name is Bruno Gransard. I have lived in Park Slope for the past 25 years. And like the majority of speakers, I support constructing housing on the soon-to-be vacated Arrow Linen commercial site. It's an obvious conversion, especially given the affordable housing crisis the city is experiencing. Now, we need more affordable housing supply. I don't think there's anyone who disputes that. But I don't think we should let desperation lead us to make really problematic decisions, which we will come to regret in future years. So I oppose this project as it currently stands for 3 reasons. One, this gargantuan development is completely out of character. I think just about most speakers who live in the neighborhood would agree with that. City of Yes calls for increasing housing supply by adding a bit more housing in all neighborhoods. And I would not call 2 13 to 19-story buildings adjacent to 4-story buildings as fitting that vision. Now, to believe that this single project will solve all of our problems or reduce rents in Windsor Terrace and the South Slope is simply not realistic. The second reason I oppose it is if we build 2 19-story buildings on Prospect Avenue, CB7 will be opening a Pandora's box of redevelopment. The South Slope and Windsor Terrace are not protected by landmark designations, which in my opinion is an anomaly, but that's another subject. Can you imagine how profitable it will become for developers to buy up low-rise houses for redevelopment? Listen, I'm a numbers guy, and I can tell you that the amount of money that could be made by swapping those quaint 2-story houses on Fuller Place or Howard Place with 19-story towers is just, unimaginable. Is that really what we want? Thirdly, from a purely business standpoint, this feels like a huge giveaway to the landowner. Shouldn't we be asking for multiple proposals from the landowner, with a starting point being what they can develop with current zoning rules? Modifying zoning rules should be entirely dependent on the quality of the project, meaning more affordable housing up to a size which is in character with existing neighborhoods. And I strongly believe that a fair chance should be given to the 100% affordable housing project that's on the table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bruno. So there being no additional hands for public comment, I would like to adjourn this public hearing for the land use proposal Arrow Linen on Prospect Avenue. Thank you everyone for your patience, your participation, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.